Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How you doing today, Nick?
Oh, very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. We have an incredible guest with us today on the podcast. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Nadira Simmons. Nadira is a social media manager at The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. Nick and I are absolute diehard Colbert fans, just a little sidebar.
Love it.
And the founder and editor-in-chief of The Gumbo, a hip-hop social club and media platform for and by Black women. I want to talk about all these things and more with Nadira. Nadira, welcome to State of Ed Podcast.
Hello, how are you guys? I'm excited to be on here. This is awesome.
Oh, we're the ones that are excited. This is phenomenal. I still don't even know how Mark booked this guest.
I can't give away all my secrets
I
because
know.
then because Nick is so much better than I am, he'll just go and form his own podcast, and I'll be left out in the dark. So Nadira, can you just start by giving us a little bit of a background into what you do at The Late Show? And I definitely want to hear a lot about The Gumbo, but I guess we'll take one thing at a time. So what is it what is your role at The Late Show?
So I am social media manager, and I'm basically overseeing our social channels, and most specifically our Instagram, helping Steven out with Instagram and getting him excited about that platform, while also coming up with and producing social ideas for the guests, any bits that we want to do with them digitally, whether they'll live on our YouTube or on our Facebook, on our Instagram, or on our Twitter. So anything that could happen on the internet, or we think should happen on the internet with one of our guests or with Steven, or repurposing things from the show into tweets or Instagram posts, or telling him like, hey, you should post this on your Instagram. That is the bulk of my work.
Most of our podcasts are about education. I'm sure we'll, segue into that as well. But as a teacher, I love being able to share with my students success stories and how people get to that point. So do you mind just talking a little bit about your academic trajectory and where you went?
For sure. So I, for lack of a better term, was a nerd in school. I was the kid that loved learning about something in school and then asking my mom to take me to the library to get like 4 or 5 books on it, and then asking what movie there was about it that I could also watch.
Nice.
And then I'm also very fortunate that my mom and dad and my grandfather are all big kind of history nerds as well. So anything that I learned in school, or anything that I had questions about, they would make sure I knew that. I've just always been into just kind of media, and I think that's kind of what led me in this direction. I originally wanted to be a newscaster, and I went to Rutgers University. I majored in journalism and media studies, and I minored in Africana studies. And after doing a bunch of courses, I kind of learned that I wouldn't be able to report on things like school shootings or hurricanes, or just a lot of things that are very, very sad, and not have a perspective. I just couldn't imagine myself being stoic talking about things that are sad and things that I am very passionate about, or things that make me feel very emotional. I did a lot of internships in college. I did an internship for Fox's Big Ten Network, interned at VH1, and kind of just bounced around at a bunch of different TV shows. My very last internship, my senior year, was at The Daily Show, which kind of led me right to The Late Show. But I was there with Trevor Noah in the beginning and kind of just learned, okay, there is this world where I can mesh together my love for news and for politics and for history and for just any and everything that's going on with the world with a funny and entertaining perspective. And you can create content in this way, and you can teach people, but you can also teach them in a way that is funny. So that's kind of how that happened.
Did Rutgers help you with those internships, or did you do them all on your own? Or
Rutgers definitely helped me a lot. I think I remember being so underwhelmed. I didn't want to go to Rutgers. I felt like everyone in New Jersey goes to Rutgers. I don't want to go here. I got into Penn State. This is where I'm going. And then you see how much schools cost, and you're like, okay, I understand why my parents are like, maybe you should go here instead. But I had a lot of professors at Rutgers who were just so helpful with sending you internships and, giving you advice, teaching you how to write better if you had any more questions. And the other good thing about Rutgers, so I did Rutgers Radio. I co-hosted a show with my friends there. Rutgers has so many different opportunities. So, me doing this small radio show and interviewing musical guests who are just up and coming, or they only have out one song, or they're not even really that big. They just make music for fun and we're interviewing them, kind of helped me get internships at places that were bigger, because I was doing work that to me felt like it was small, but it was still showing I'm able to go and sit down with someone and conduct an interview and research an interview and then write about an interview and then go back and edit it. So a lot of the tools that Rutgers provided me, whether it was in the classroom or, in a club, they were so helpful.
Nick and I both live in the public school secondary world. And so if I could take you back pre-Rutgers to your middle school and high school experience. So I love the fact that you admitted that you're a nerd. Nick and I, well, I'll speak for myself. I definitely was.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, I knew that he was, but I didn't want to.
The only difference between us is that I'm still a nerd and he's now cool, but that's all right.
Well, you have a very loose definition of the word cool. But so back in middle school, back in high school, your trajectory really reminds me of sort of what we're currently struggling with as educators right now, because we have a lot of individuals who are very good educators, skilled educators, but they come with a very traditional mindset into the classroom. We're preparing students to be doctors, to be lawyers, to be teachers, to be engineers, so jobs that fit certain static descriptions and where there are sort of a clear path to the vocation. Your story and your narrative is really in that space that I think so many young people are starting to find themselves in, and that's what is, I feel, difficult for a number of educators to sort of really conceptualize. You have found a way to mesh and merge different worlds. So you have, like you said, you have a love of politics, but you also have a good sense of humor, and you also like social media, and you like creating things, and you like talking to people, and you like interacting. And so you're finding an occupation and where you can put all of those skills to the test. Whereas in school, we typically break things down. We take all that synthesis away, and we just say, well, which corner or which category are you going to be in? Are you going to be a math person or a math science person, or are you going to be a humanities person? You are merging all of these different things. So did you receive any type of training, or were your classes or your teachers encouraging you to sort of put all these different talents, to bring all these talents to bear?
It's interesting because up until, I want to say, the 7th grade, I took a lot of my classes, maybe from the 4th grade to the 7th grade. I took a lot of my classes, which are kind of like your formative years. You're going from preteen to teenager. I took a lot of my classes with the same kids because we were all in the gifted program that New Jersey had set up at the time. So the kids that scored, I don't know if it was the highest or in the highest percentile in our school on a test, they put us all in a class together. And at the time I was like, oh, this is amazing. We're putting all of the quote unquote smart kids in a class together. But it kind of made me question now, okay, is that really the best way to just section off a bunch of kids that probably did well on a test one day and is not the best reflection of something, and put them in a classroom? The one thing I will say is that it felt like there was a different kind of nurturing for us at that time. So we would have these classes where we were able to, we're going to learn, we're going to do science, we're going to, challenge you to do more because you're in this accelerated class and accelerated program. We're also going to let you create a website, and you're going to go and, there were just a lot of opportunities for creativity. And when I got to high school, I mean, the same way I am now, like, I just wanted to try everything. So I played field hockey for 4 years. I played softball for 3 years. I was class president, but I also wanted to do like the Spirit Club, and I did that for all 4 years. And I think I was in a very unique situation where the teachers at my school kind of gave everyone the room to just succeed. The one thing I also will say that I noticed, though, is like going back to just observing putting all of these kids in a classroom together, was that it kind of gave you the upper hand sometimes with teachers, because they would say, oh, like, we know her, she's great, she can she can miss out on class to go work on this extra project that she has going on. So sometimes I do look back at that and say there were other kids there should have been other opportunities for everyone, not just the kid that you like because she's a class president or because, she, is nice to everyone. So yeah, it was a big mix of that. I will say my school and my younger sisters went to the same schools that I did. I felt like our teachers were very supportive, but I do feel like at the same time, sometimes it's difficult to give that support to students if they don't fit into a certain box. Because I also felt like, there were other students that could have excelled or could have achieved well, but you want them to pass their class. And I can't help you create this website or, kind of engage with you outside of this curriculum because you have to pass this class so you can go on to the next grade. So it was a good thing, but it's also something now that I'm 25, I look back and I'm like, that wasn't really the best for everyone.
And this is something that Nick and I talk about all the time, is that we have to find a way to leverage technological tools so we can still create the space that you're talking about and use it to motivate students to succeed academically and still check all the boxes that we need to check in terms of the system. And in terms of our educational obligations to the students, but do it in a way that enhances their creativity so we can turn out young people like you who are not only very smart academically, but also have all sorts of other intelligences that you have learned through years of cultivating how to synthesize them together and make them work for you to the point where you can work for one of the most successful television shows in the world, and you represent the height of what we're trying to accomplish educationally, and that's part of this tremendous shift that's going on that Nick and I have been having a 15-year conversation regarding.
Yeah.
I mean, the part that's so frustrating educationally is, when you talk about being in that cohort of the advanced gifted students, that was all based on some paper and pen tests that you took when you were 8 years old. And that's great. You were born with this natural intelligence. It's wonderful. But you're not successful today because of your natural intelligence alone.
Exactly.
You're successful because of your personality, because of your drive, because of your passion, because you're committed, and because it seems like you had a good academic experience. But I just feel I feel sorry for the kids. Like, I don't know how. I hate to be so logistical here. Do you remember like how many kids were in that group?
I want to say there was like 20 of us.
And how many were in your grade about every year?
Our class, it was the same 20 from my grade every year. So they might have had like a 20 from the class of 2012, 20 from the class of 2011. Right. So they kept us together, and if they split us up, it was only so we would have opposing classes that were right next door at the same period. But yeah, it was the same group.
What was your graduating class? Was your graduating class 100, 200?
Oh my God, what was my graduating class at? Let me check.
Oh, don't worry, it's not that.
There were a lot of kids at my high school.
So my point is, think of all those other kids who didn't get the same experience, and it doesn't mean that they're not equally capable of enjoying. Yeah. Let's be honest. The whole point of school should be to cultivate your skills and develop your citizenship and become hopeful.
Yeah, but I also feel like everyone learns differently, and sometimes I would go home and tell my mom and dad, like, I want to be in classes with the other kids, and they literally the same conversation we're having now they had with me, not too much because I was young, and I'm sure they didn't want to make me too upset about the fact that this is the reality of what's happening, but they definitely told me, like, listen, like, this is what you guys said. There are other people who deserve to be nurtured and tended to, either in the same way or in the best way for them. And sometimes I look back at that time and I just felt like sometimes we were given certain privileges, even if we got in trouble. Like, there were times where we would all get in trouble and like maybe we got like a demerit or a write-up or something, but it never felt like it was something that was going to hinder us. Whereas like I knew, okay, if my other friend who's not in this class gets in trouble, they're going to be reprimanded. They might be suspended. Now they're missing class. What if they go home and they don't have the ability to print out their work? Like there's so many things about splitting students up now that I'm older. I like am really like, that is not always the best thing to do.
Indira,
yeah.
Listen, no, I don't care. In every school, when a kid walks in and he or she is part of that gifted, advanced, whatever you want to call it, it's like they get this card that allows them to walk around school and do whatever they want whenever they want. Because they don't need to have a pass in the hall. They don't need to ask to go to the, like, they just get, and by the way, I think every kid should be treated that way. But it's like we have this, we have this one set of rules for those students, and then everybody else, gets punished tremendously. So.
Yeah, and my parents, they didn't play around, so I stayed out of trouble. But a lot of my friends who were in those classes with me, they would get up and like walk out the room just to go to the bathroom. I'm not doing that. I am not trying to get in any trouble. But there was a certain authority that they felt they had that I'm still friends with a lot of them now, but it affects you in your adulthood too.
So you have a tremendous amount of expertise in the area of social media, obviously. Mm-hmm. Can you help educators like Nick and I and others who are listening to this podcast in on what you believe are good, effective strategies of how to leverage social media to be more effective educators, and also how teachers could use social media to help empower kids?
I definitely think the most important thing is figuring out what your what's the goal of your social media? Because sometimes I'll do consulting for people and they'll say, oh, I want to have like a lot of followers, or I want to talk about this all the time. And it's really important to figure out what your goal is and then who is your audience. Because if your goal is to teach people about cooking, your audience can't be 5-year-olds. Not saying that they don't have the ability to, but there are people out here who have kitchens and homes who will be able to access the tools to follow the recipes on your cooking channel quicker than somebody who doesn't. So I think it's really important to figure out what the goal of your social media is, figuring out your audience, and then you're just creating content. And sometimes that's like difficult for people because it's kind of just like a shot in the dark, what's going to work, what's not going to work. But studying the other people who are doing a lot of the things that you aspire to do, experimenting with video content or static posts or, words or quotes, and then also figuring out as a part of that audience part, if your audience is going to be, say, quote unquote, Gen X, then you might want to go, to Instagram, also maybe to Facebook. Now, if your audience is millennials or Gen Z, you're way better off on Twitter and Instagram than trying to, educate or teach people on Facebook. Because I am 25 and I don't go on Facebook as often as my mom does. I love her to death. She's on Facebook every day sending me memes. I'll get on there and I'm like, you send me all these memes. Why didn't you just send them on Instagram? They were on Instagram 2 weeks ago. So it's really important to figure out your goal, your audience, and then find your community. The best thing that you can do is find people who, think like you, who will be interested in your stuff, and, follow them, engage with their stuff. That's a really big thing. Sometimes people will just post all of the things that they want to and not respond to any of the comments, not retweet it, not share it, not send it to anyone. And just being engaged with the stuff that you're creating. Sometimes people don't want to do it because they don't want to annoy their followers, or they don't want to annoy the people, around them. Like, oh, you're sending me this again. But that engagement really helps broaden your audience and increase your audience.
How often are you guys checking like the data on your social media sites?
I check it every morning.
You do? Okay.
When I wake up. Yes, we're on hiatus, so I haven't checked it in like a week and a half. But I wake up every morning just to see how the posts have done from the previous day. So just kind of measuring, okay, if, this video has text on it and people are able to read the closed captioning, it might get more views than, say, the video with no closed captioning. So just monitoring stuff like that, seeing, okay, someone liked a joke about this person, or they didn't like a joke about this person. Maybe people on Instagram don't recognize who this person is. And then you get on Facebook, it did way better. So next time we mention this person on the show, maybe we'll kick him off to Facebook, but we don't have to include him on Instagram or on Twitter. But I check it very religiously just because I'm always interested. I like seeing how many likes it got. I like seeing how many times someone clicked back and forth on our stories. I like seeing how many views our stuff got and just seeing the peak times of when our audience is online. Yeah.
Is there pressure to go viral with the content? Because obviously there's major competition in the late night space.
I definitely don't feel like there is pressure to go viral. I feel like we are we're just supplementing all of the things that we're creating and what's being said on the show. And more than anything, it's creating good stuff, and all of the stuff that we create that's good, it always does fairly well. So I don't ever feel like, oh God, if this doesn't get this many likes, we're doomed. Like I never feel like that. And there's the people in charge, and especially my director over me, he's good about saying like, let's post this. I think people will love this. We'll all agree, yeah, people will love this. It's less about going viral and more about how can we repurpose our show into content that makes sense on all of our different platforms.
It seems like it's just merely an offshoot of the show, but it's really not. But it's so integral to the show because I had mentioned before we had started recording to you, Nadira, that a good friend of mine is been in TV for 25 years now, right. And a few years ago he made a very, very salient point to me, and he basically reminded me what I should have been aware of all along, which is in today's content or today's media, a screen is a screen is a screen is a screen. So I used to delineate, well, that's on TV, or that's a film, or that's just a YouTube video, or that's just a video on Twitter. It doesn't matter anymore. Content is content is content. And that is, for someone like me, I grew up in a different time, so I have to redefine what content means to me. And this translates to education too. There's so much redefinition and has to occur inside the old minds, gray-haired minds like mine, and it's essential, because if we're not doing that, then we're losing opportunities to spark interest in our students. We're losing opportunities to really help our students grow and prepare them for the world that they're already in, but they will be stepping into without the net or the safety net that is school. Right. So how do we encourage students to use social media better? Because I could tell you as an administrator, that is one of the nightmare areas in my world. It got a little bit better when Snapchat came around, only because they figured out how to make things disappear. Before, when everything was sticking, it was a true nightmare. Now it's just as nightmarish, if not more, but I don't have as much evidence to have conversations with parents. But how do we empower them as educators, the students to use social media the right way?
The one thing that always stuck with me, and my mom used to say this to me when I was younger, I snuck and made a Facebook when I was, I think, 14, and she found it. I got in a whole bunch of trouble, but the reason her and my dad didn't want me to have one is because they would always say the internet is not a game, and anything you post on there lives forever. And I was like, oh, I'll just delete it. It's not going to be up there forever. But even I don't believe anything that you post on the internet is going to go away. And I think that's always stuck with me. I say that to my friends, just even older family members, like, I wouldn't touch that. Even some of my friends who, work at other amazing places, I'm like, no, let's not even post that. Let's not go live while we're just maybe in a certain area or around a party, because you just never know what's going to happen, who's going to say what, who's going to be watching. And the other thing is that somebody's always watching. Even when you think they're not, someone's always watching. So I think the most important thing to tell kids with social media, just in general, is that just be mindful of what you post. And if you have to think twice about posting it, don't share it. There have been many times where I've thought twice about not sharing something, and I saw someone else post it and nothing happened. And I'm a big overthinker. I'm very tedious with everything. But if I ever overthink anything, I don't post it. And I think that should just be applicable to students on social media in general. And then as far as getting them engaged, I remember one of my I have a few teachers from high school who are actually on Facebook still, and I talk to them every once in a while. But it was the most entertaining thing, and I guess impactful thing for me in grade school was the ways in which my classes or any of the lessons were kind of like turned into go watch this YouTube video and then maybe log about it on this platform. Like there were different ways for us to engage, which that it goes back to saying like that school was really really amazing, and I feel very privileged to have had teachers who could say go home and get on your computer and have a computer at home and be able to participate and engage with this lesson outside of let me just read this book and then write this paper with a pen or a pencil. And then because I'll do it, I love getting A's. I was the kid who if I didn't get an A I would freak out, so I would do it. But there were ways where I was given a lot of outlets and ways to engage with the stuff I was learning outside of just writing it down. And I think on social media, you can do a lot of the same things. I started a series right after the passing of George Floyd where I started just sharing like random Black history facts that people just didn't know about. And I have Photoshop, so I would just go on, find the photos, share a few quick facts, and they're getting shared tremendously. I'd share them every Sunday. And it's just making the stuff interesting, making it look visually appealing, which is a big deal, and making it fun. I think if people, the big word is engaged. If people aren't going to want to talk about it or people aren't going to want to type and respond, then students aren't going to get excited. But if they know, like, if I'm going to post this on my Instagram tonight, it's a photo of so-and-so, go leave a comment and tell me why it's important. I'll give you 5 bonus points on a test or just something like that. Like that makes kids excited to say like, oh, I'm going to go on my teacher's Instagram and I can't wait for him to post his post that he said is coming at 8 p.m. You can make countdowns in your Instagram story. Like there are so many ways, but just making it engaging. And I feel like sometimes even when I'm doing consulting, people always wonder like, oh, well, what if people don't like it? And if you're even thinking, what if people don't like it? You know that they're not going to like it. So just start from scratch again and figure out something that you would be interested in engaging with.
What platform is that Black History stuff you do on Sunday?
So I do that on Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you still doing it? Are you still doing it?
Yep, I do it every Sunday. It's anywhere from 6 to 10 slides. I give a quick breakdown of what happened, why it happened, any like resources to learn more, or like examples in modern culture, whether there's movies or books. But that's just something because I'm a nerd, so I like to research things. I like teaching people things. So
Nick is an AP US history teacher. You're about to get one additional follower, Nadira.
Yeah, I'll be as soon as we hang up. I will be following that.
Love it, love it.
That's a long walk for one follower. I'm just going to tell you that, Nadira. But you're getting a good follower.
I'm so excited.
Now, unfortunately, I have Instagram, but I don't really know how to use it. So I'm going to have my niece help me out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nieces are the best.
Can you ask her if she could help me also? Because I have it downloaded, but I haven't been brave enough. My kids obviously use it every 30 seconds, but you're also a creator of other content and other sites. So one of the things that you've started is called the Gumbo. So can you take us through a little bit about the Gumbo and what the origin story there is?
So coming out of college, just going off of interning at The Daily Show and just being a big fan of music, I really wanted to do something that like incorporated television and music in some way. I also had this journalism degree, so I obviously could write. So I ended up getting a position at a media site that's really big, really revered, and I was super duper excited, and I wasn't getting paid. And I was okay with it at first. I was like, I'm working at this great place. Their history is amazing, and it's fine. But I'm still working the summer after college before I literally got the Late Show offer in August. I was still working at an amusement park hosting birthday parties. So I was like, it's fine. I'm just going to make this money on the side. And, after a few weeks, they'll hire me. And it got to, I ended up doing it for a few months after I got hired at the Late Show. I kept doing it. But I wasn't getting paid. And I was doing a lot more heavy lifting, like more and more each week. So, you know, we only need you to write 2 articles a day, to me now writing 5 articles a day. We only need you 2 days a week, to can you do 5 days a week? So I'm like on break at this amusement park while there's kids running around, like writing an article, doing an interview on my lunch break. Like there was just so much happening, and I felt like this is something that I'm really passionate about, something that I really, really love. And while I love it so much and I would do anything to do it, I don't really think it's cool that I'm not getting paid to do it. And I felt like as a Black woman in media, it's, you know, difficult. You're operating in a space where not everyone looks like you. And to be in rooms sometimes where I felt like my voice wasn't prioritized and that sometimes I just wasn't being listened to, but I was just working so hard. I wanted to be able to provide opportunities to a lot of other Black women because I went to school with a lot of Black women who are amazing writers, amazing journalists, amazing interviewers, have their own podcasts, have their own radio shows, all these great things. And they're being passed over at these companies or at these positions. And if they're not being passed over, they're getting paid extremely little or just nothing. And I wanted to create a site where not only can, you know, I pay people, but I can also create a safe space for Black women to come together and talk about music. Because even sometimes when I tweet about the music I like, there's always like a man under the tweet. He's like, well, what do you know about this? And why do you think this is this way? And actually you're wrong, which is like, okay, buddy, I don't mind debating with you, but sometimes you do want to have that safe space where you don't have to worry about someone coming in and trying to quiz you on your knowledge of music and of hip hop. So
I already apologized, Nadira. How many more times do I have to? No.
But yeah, so that was literally it. And then I was just trying to figure out a name, and it came to me one night in a dream. I was just like, what's a word that just signifies everything coming together and you just throwing in a bunch of great things, from writers to artists to musicians to podcasters to videographers. What's a word that signifies throwing in a bunch of ingredients and creating something good? I love New Orleans. I thought of gumbo, and then that was the name.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So what's the plan for the gumbo? Like how do you see it unfolding over, you know, the next 6 months to 5 years?
Mm-hmm. So we just finished a really large crowdfunding campaign. We wanted to raise $10,000, and we actually raised a little over $20,000, which was amazing. And I think the one thing I want our site to be forever is, I know sometimes people think there's not a space for writers or to read people's work. I really want the stuff we write to be more than just a biography of an artist or, you know, a breakdown of an album that you could find on another site. I want people to have a few weeks to go and to research, you know, the origins of somebody's hairstyle and the roots that has and how that was influenced by something, you know, in the early 1900s. I want us to create stuff that's not really like a check out this new song or this new album. Like, that's not what we do. I want it to be just really well researched, really well thought out pieces. And I feel like that just goes back to my time at Rutgers, my minor, my major, me just always being a nerd. I want people to come and just create these really well thought out and well researched pieces on a part of our culture that is often ignored. So that's where I see it just existing forever. I don't know where we're going to go back outside again, but I would love for us to host an all Black women music festival. Wow. I don't think there's anything like that. And I think even when I go to festivals, sometimes a lot of my favorite artists are on another stage all the way on the other side of the park, and they only have a 30-minute set.
Right. At like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they have the other really, really big headliner who's on the other side of the stage, and their set's an hour long, and if you don't get there early enough, you're going to be in the back, you won't see them, and sometimes they're just not at those festivals altogether. So I just want to create a space where, you know, I have a lot of friends who are Black women who are DJs. A lot of them make music, they produce, and there are so many people who sing, and I just want to create that fellowship that I think is just so important for us to have, and to keep people paid is the big thing.
Oh, that's amazing.
Thank you.
It really is. It's great to listen to that. It's exciting.
Thank you.
What you were describing really speaks to me about the power of representation. and why that's so important. It's always been important, but of course now with everything that's going on in our country and in our world, the emphasis rightly is finally on there in a meaningful way. And representation just means so much in the classroom. It means so much online. It means so much in every corner of the world. And you can't ever overstate the importance of representation.
Yeah, I know it makes people nervous sometimes. It makes people uncomfortable. I remember one day I tweeted, I was like, "Why are people so uncomfortable saying the word black?" And then one of my friends was like, "Is that okay to say?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay, it's fine." But I think just being outward about the representation, whether it's race or gender or class, just wanting to make sure that people are marginalized, are heard, and are uplifted is so important. And I just can't overstate that enough. Like, let's just do it. Let's call it is. Hook some people up, help them out, and uplift them.
I mean, Nick and I have talked about this many times. This is one of the problems that we run into in our schools, is because we have perpetuated the system that pre-existed us. So, in terms of the authors that are read and the content that is taught. And so much has been normalized over generations. And it's time now that things get a second look. And that doesn't mean that we have to. I'm not a big fan of cancel culture in the sense that we just have to cancel everything. Like, I feel like I understand why cancel culture exists, but I feel like it really is about creating the space to have the conversations, because through the conversations we can learn. If we only want to be binary and say either thumbs up or thumbs down on something, and once the herd says, no bueno, now that, everything has to be torn down. And that doesn't allow for the important conversations to really exist. And that's one of the reasons why we do this podcast, and one of the reasons why, we promote this type of viewpoint and perspective, because that's where people really get to articulate and get to gain an understanding. That's where empathy comes from. If you just cancel everything, there's no understanding, there's no empathy, there's no conversation.
Yeah, conversations are so important.
I think this is the opportunity that we cannot let go by. So many people are finally getting an education about our history, and like I can't tell you how many people in my circle told me that they had never heard of what happened at Black Wall Street. Now I wasn't taught it. I didn't learn it in high school. I didn't learn it in college. I learned it when I started teaching on my own. And I've probably been teaching it for maybe only 10 years. So it's not like, but the number of people who knew absolutely nothing about it.
Nothing,
So this is and that's not, I know people think that that's brainwashing. It's history. It happened. You decide what you think about it. But this is what happened, okay? The most successful economic experience for African Americans, arguably in history, right? Relatively speaking, was destroyed. I'm just telling you what happened. I'm giving you the facts. And I think and that's why I can't wait to get on your Instagram account, but because I'm sure I'm going to learn more things. But that's what this moment is. And then that's how we're going to progress and move forward as a society. The more people just simply learn what our past, that's not hating the country. It's just teaching what happened.
It's also, I mean, you can't go forward without knowing what happened in the past. That's just always been my big thing. It's so important to just know what happened, and that comes down to sometimes access, sometimes more often than not, people don't have access. Like I said, I was very privileged, grew up in the suburbs in South Jersey. If a computer broke in my house, I knew we'd get another one within a day or the next day. And I know for some kids, they don't have computers. So you have to go to the library and hopefully get all of your work done by 5 p.m. when they close. So I just think it's a matter of access and giving people context for any and everything that you can. And in schools, that's so important. I think for me, I would go home and my parents would give me those different perspectives. And I was able to go look on my computer and learn more about what happened in this town that my teacher like only read one sentence about in social studies class. But yeah, that access is so important to help people just really contextualize a lot of things.
No, that's where social media plays such a huge role, because if they look, until we change, I mean, I know we're running out of time here. Until we change the educational system, teachers are not going to teach about what happened at Black Wall Street for one reason. It's never on a test. So if it's not on a standardized test, they won't cover it.
So interesting.
So that's why what you're doing can be so powerful, because that is how we reach people today. And we reach people, we reach elderly people through social media, we reach, kids. So that's where the education part is so critical.
But Nick, to your point, one of the problems that we face in education is the folks who want to fix this problem will use a very old-fashioned method, which is, well, let's put Black Wall Street on the test, and then we'll guarantee that it gets taught. But the cycle of time that has to go by before somebody who's in that seat gets to make that declaration and put that on the test is already, how many kids have cycled through the school system by that point? So the problem is not, well, let's make a list of new things that we need to add to the Regents exam or the state assessment. But we have to create another system that allows educators, that promotes educators to include these types of things and represent these types of histories, this myriad of history to the students, and more importantly, empower students to want to research all of these different types of exactly. So that's really the ultimate solution in terms of, as I see it, moving forward. Otherwise, we're just trying to shoehorn an old-fashioned, outdated model to fit into incredibly different times. And Nadira's story is the story of our times in many ways, in terms of her trajectory and her success, and being able to leverage all of her talents and all of her skills, and that in order for that to happen, there has to be so much luck involved. I'm just repeating what you said, right? You had two really supportive parents at home. They were able to provide for you. You didn't have to worry if there would be food in the cabinet. You got a computer. If the computer broke, it got fixed.
Right.
You were a self-declared nerd, and you wanted to go to the library. So there's so much good fortune in terms of your personality and your environment growing up. We have to find a way to create that kind of opportunity for all kids.
For everyone,
regardless of whether or not they have the good fortune of having, well, the secret ingredients that you were lucky enough to be a recipient of.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that one day, if I make enough money, that's something I just think about a lot. Even just living in different areas and moving out of New Jersey, and kind of just opening my eyes to the reality that, like, oh, I'm going into a school and there's not a computer lab. Like, I remember the first time I saw it, and I called my mom and dad, and they're like, yeah, Nadira, everyone is not from this town in South Jersey. What are you talking about? And my parents and my grandparents always did a really great job of making sure I was mindful of my privilege, which I'm very, very thankful for. But that's something I think about a lot. And even going to Rutgers, and that's the first time I have a class that's a specialized class, a class on African American history, or a class on women in gender studies, or a class on women in, a certain part of the world. I feel like those classes would have been so beneficial to so many people in high school or in middle school. And it could have been maybe fun for them to learn outside of just, our regular, we have 4 subjects, and then maybe take a language if you want to. But I think about that a lot. There are just so many opportunities, but that word of access is so big, and you guys both touched on it. It's just making sure that everyone, no matter where you're from, no matter what your household looks like, you shouldn't be unable to participate in something at school because you have a hold on your lunch account. Like, that used to happen all the time in my school, and I was like, what? This is crazy. Like, this doesn't even make sense. You shouldn't be able to not check out a book that you need to complete a project because you owe, like, I remember one time someone owed 75 cents. I was like, are you serious? Just give them like, what? But so many things like that. There are so many barriers, and you guys are amazing, because for one point in my life, I thought about being a teacher. I was like, no, that is a very, very hard, exhausting, but also rewarding job, and you guys are so important.
Thank you. Nick, on a scale of 1 to 10, would Nadira be an 11 in the classroom, in your opinion?
Oh, beyond that. Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. Kids would love
she's the dream
you.
student. Listen,
we're
going to have
to
to
talk about as a teacher.
Of course. We're going to have to beg her to come back again because we're going to need another session. Too much to talk about.
Sounds good to me.
So I have one last question for you, which I came up with over the weekend because that's when I saw this. So I'm going to steal a line from your boss and Nick and I's, one of our favorites of all time, Stephen Colbert. Okay. Mm-hmm. So Black is King, great visual album or greatest visual album?
Oh my God. Well, Beyonce is the queen of the visual album, and I think this is her greatest yet. It looks amazing. When I was watching it, I was recording it on my Instagram, so I was like screaming in the background. Jay-Z is also my favorite rapper, so I geek out over him. So I loved it. Visually, it was just so interesting to see them reimagine that storyline with just people, and I loved it.
I thought it was breathtaking. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
She's a genius.
Yeah. Truly.
All right. Well, so you answered that one correctly. So you're off to a good start. Well, Nadira, it really is such a pleasure to have you on. And Nick is right. We're gonna have to beg you to come back again at some point because
anytime.
I feel like I can have a conversation with you for a very, very long time and remain incredibly interested the whole time. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna try to get those Instagram. I'm gonna try to get your Instagram followers up through my students.
I would love that. Yes.
I'm going to go back. I have I could probably go back about 7 years of my classes with communication.
Nick is an influencer with the smallest eye imaginable. There's like the Kardashians on one side of the spectrum. And then there's me and Nick on the influencer spectrum on the other side.
Hey, you got to start somewhere.
Oh my God.
That's true.
You do. Exactly.
Well, Nadira, thank you so much. It really was such a pleasure.
Thank you both so much.
As usual, you can find us on any podcast directory, including Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on the web at stateofedpodcast.com, where you'll find links to all of Nadira's content, her Twitter, her Instagram, her website, and of course, lots of information about the gumbo, so please check that out as well. Feel free to pick up a copy of my book, Forward Fast, Making Sense of Education in an Era of Rapid Change, wherever books are sold. And you can find me at Mark6 on Twitter or online, mark6.com. And of course, a big thanks to Nadira Simmons, today's guest, for taking the time out and sharing her impressive story with us and our audience.
Awesome. Yeah, this is so fun.
Thanks so much. Everybody stay safe. Have a good one.